tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I don't think it's supposed to be on.
All right,
that's
I'd
right.
like to
Yeah,
call to
so-
order the regularly scheduled Board of Finance meeting for Wednesday, August 9th. We'll start with Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We only have 4 members in attendance. Ryan and Brianna could not make it, so we'll go to public comment. Andy Kane, first up.
Hi, my name is Andy Keem, 5 River Drive. I'd like to speak in favor of the proposed salary study for the town of Brookfield. This study would provide needed objective information that would be useful in setting fairer salary ranges in our town. We have never had an objective salary study in Brookfield before. The study is in keeping with the Board of Finance's comparative analysis and expenditure review responsibilities of what is fair, reasonable, and objective in determining salaries in the town of Brookfield. As to funding, I don't think we need to spend new money on this. We have a $50,000 item set in reserve for a referendum on a new library. These funds should be reprogrammed to the salary study. As you know, a $20 million proposal for a new library was voted down significantly by the common sense residents who knew schools and emergency facilities are of a greater and immediate need to the community. Brookfield has also spent close to $1 million upgrading our beautiful existing library. Costs have since skyrocketed. Most importantly, we don't need a new library, and most library information is available through the excellent Wowberry online app for free. Thank you for your efforts.
Thank you for your comments. Next, Tony Carr.
Hi, Tony Carr, 54 Indian Trail. I just wanted to express my support for the application of the STEEP grant for the proposed pickleball courts.
Thank you. Anyone else?
We all second that motion.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Anybody else want to speak though publicly? Hearing none, we're going to move on. We had communication and correspondence. We had Andy Correa and Elizabeth Kennedy up to the time of the agenda. We did receive a lot of emails over the past day or so, and we will put them on the next agenda as well. So then I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes for July 12th of our regular meeting. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. I'd like to make a motion now that we add to the agenda the presentation of the STEEP grant, for the STEEP grant, and we present it now. Do I have a second?
Second.
You got it.
Discussion? Hearing none. Good to go. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, STEEP grant, we're on.
All right, so should I come up or no?
Yes, please.
Do we have a speaker? Is this?
I have a handout.
It should be in the ceiling.
Oh, okay. Just wanted to make
Thank
sure
you.
that was.
There you are. Oh, I feel like a teacher again.
Yeah,
Here you
it's
are.
exciting.
I know. Marsha, you're in control. You're good. You memorized it. All right. So, well, I'll start walking and talking here. So, anyone over here would like a copy, or you're good? Okay. Right, I'm sitting here, not there. So, we had presented on Monday evening to the Board of Selectmen the STEEP grant application and came up with an option for everyone. So without further ado, I would like to present to you what this grant would entail and how we would best apply these practices. So I'll be going over the eligibility, the terms and conditions, the priority project areas, the options evaluated, recommended option, which which the Board of Selectmen voted on Monday, and the resolution. That is something that, if you're in agreement, we would like to have for tonight, since the application is coming up soon. So, eligibility. So if you see here, there's $30 million appropriated, 116 towns. That doesn't leave a lot of wiggle room for us, so we really want to get on top of it. We have the opportunity to get $500,000 for this grant. It's for capital projects only, and even though we did apply for a STEEP grant in 2022, we would still be able to apply for this one. That wouldn't hold us back. And eligible projects would include some things such as recreation. So the town had this was a discussion earlier, and there was a lot of feedback from the community that pickleball is desperately needed. We only have 2 courts, and they're actually multi-purpose courts at Cadigan. I'm sure any of these folks can tell you here that whenever they go and play, there's ample lines. I've stopped by and people are continuously playing. They play early morning, afternoon, and night. I've even had requests to turn the lights on, so if any of you are here, I'm sorry they weren't on late for you. But there is a large demand in our community, and I talked to a few people today, and they said that the community is actually growing, and it's not just one age group, it's not one demographic, it's growing into a much larger culture here in town, so we would love to support that growth.
So much so, if I may, that today I had a call, somebody spray painted a pickleball court in a cul-de-sac on one of our streets. So we don't want that happening.
No. So our terms and conditions, this, as I had mentioned, it's encroaching as far as the deadline. It is August 18th. We didn't know about this until July 12th. So that's why we're really trying to get a move on this. And we would know if the award is accepted in late September. Again, I already mentioned $500,000. We did talk about a town match, and working with Marcia, we were able to find that in a Still River Greenway grant for engineering plans. That's
We have $64,000 for engineering for the Still River Greenway for a $5 million grant that we had at budget time we had applied for. We did not get that grant. We also have $24,500 left over in ARPA money because we can't transfer that yet because we don't know the rules. Then we have $11,500 we believe will be in the 2023 operating budget from Parks and Rec. That adds up to the $100,000. The reason we would spend the Still River Greenway money is because since budget time, that has all changed, and instead of us doing it town by town, Westcog has taken it on, and they will be paying if there's grant.
It's a federal grant.
They will be paying for that extension, and we would not be having to pay for anything. So that's where the proposal for the money would come from.
thank you.
And we have the $29,000 in the comfort stations in the line if you wanted to do something there, right?
We already have in the cash $29,000 for comfort stations, because that was talked about on Monday night as improving those. But even without this, with $29,000, we could approve those.
So the priority project areas, we actually already qualify for several under this list. We would be improving quality of life and adding infrastructure to the town here. So really we just have to be shovel ready, which is listed up there. Board of Selectmen approval, which we did get last night, which is fantastic. Consistent with the plan of conservation and development, project plans and specs established, and all local funding secured. So all of that checks off. So we're good to move forward. So we did evaluate several sites. We didn't just jump on Town Hall immediately, understanding that there are certain spaces that we're reserving for future development. Cadigan Park was looked at. However, it would be right on top of the septic system, so that was not something that was possible, and that's the only space that was available there. Williams Park, there was an opportunity, but we had a lot of outreach from the Conservation Commission as well as neighbors and other people within the community that wanted to really keep that more of a sanctuary and respect the space, lots of noise with the pickleball. So moving forward, Kara and I had looked over at the Town Hall campus and decided that a fantastic spot we'll go over shortly, but it's right in between the band shell and the soccer field. There's plenty of room there. And so as far as other department needs, the Town Hall office renovations for phase 2, the police and WPCA, those are all the areas that we didn't want to touch. So that's why we're focusing kind of farther back and tucked away so it's quiet. The next page is what we were initially looking at for the master plan of Williams Park. We'll probably be continuing certain phases here without the pickleball courts, such as expanding the parking lot, at least improving that parking lot. I'm sure many of you are familiar with that lot. It's not under the best shape. adding in a picnic area and adding in an ADA winding trail so that folks can get down to that loop around the pond. That's something that our department is looking for and pushing for all of our parks to make sure that they are accessible for all. And possibly adding a compost bathroom there, something to look at. But anyway, so the next slide shows you the actual space, as I was saying, in between the band shell and the soccer field there. We're actually going off a master plan that was created in 2021, and it was unfortunately not awarded, and we're hoping that we can kind of revitalize that and get this back up and running, and we can add this as part of the plan and start here actually at phase 1 by adding the pickleball courts. So phase 1, the scope would be adding the 4 courts as shown here. It's the little blue rectangle. And we would also be adding, there is a winding trail that is already up from the parking lot that goes around the playground, but it is in a lot of need of repair right now. I'm not sure if you've walked it. It's kind of bulging where the stumps or the roots from trees are kind of bulging out. And we would like to improve the ADA compliance, especially for those folks that attend the concerts on Friday night. Everyone's kind of clumped up at the top that aren't really steady on their feet, so this would add a better opportunity for them for not just pickleball, but also for the overall enjoyment of our park here.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why we need the ADA access to the lower portion of the town hall campus. We've got graduation ceremonies and other events where we've got folks who need to have access to getting closer to that pavilion.
And then we would also be looking at, in probably another phase, I'm not sure if that would be included in phase 1 just because of the cost, limited to the $500,000, but also upgrading that bathroom in there as well. It's a little old. So the future phases are in the LR capital list. And
Do we know why that wasn't granted?
the
Abbreviated in 21?
Greg, could you speak on that?
Why, it was a deep grant in 2021 for $1 million, would have been the first 2 phases of the master plan. We just didn't score. It was a very competitive grant. We just didn't score high. And we typically don't score high on some of these grants because they favor distressed communities.
Yep.
And those kind of things, and we just don't score high in those areas. So if there's future years of more steep grants, $500,000 a year, we can talk about future phases in future years. And we might break through on one of these deep grants.
Thanks.
The master plan, have you guys seen the master plan for the town hall campus? No, it's really nice. There's a lot of upgrades and ideas to tie the trail together to the campus and create extra parking and things, so something to think about for the future.
All right, thank you, Marcia. So right now, as we did not mention, but pickleball was already in the Parks and Rec long range plan. It was set up prior to me beginning here in January. We already talked about the town match, and our next steps would be, if we're awarded, we would have, first if it approves here, our commission will have to go back and approve it as far as the location goes, and an RFP for engineering, design, and then construction. So our target completion date, if we were awarded in late September, would be the summer of 2024.
Is your special meeting after the application or before, and does that align with the charter?
So
The charter says we have to have a town meeting for initial applications for federal or state grants involving the commitment to expend town funds that have not yet been appropriated. We have not appropriated these funds, so we don't have the authorization by town charter to approve this money right now, I don't think. That's in section
And the Board of Selectmen didn't approve it.
C94, actions requiring a town meeting. Number 5 states that the initial applications for federal or state grants involving the commitment to expend town funds that have not yet been appropriated. So do we have the authority to approve this now to put in the grant without a town meeting?
So if I'm not mistaken, the allocation of the money isn't due for 30 days
It
after?
says initial
But to apply?
applications. That's the word, initial. This is the initial application.
I don't have the charter in front of me.
I do, right here.
Okay,
So-
so can you reread that, please?
It says initial applications for federal or state grants involving the commitment to expend town funds that have not yet been appropriated.
So we would have to have a special town meeting to appropriate the funds before we apply, and then have a special town meeting to appropriate the funds.
I'm asking you.
Well, what did you do last year in the WPCA steep grant? Does anybody know how they did that?
That was a WPCA application. I don't know if there was I don't know what they did for you, for the $500,000 that got approved last year.
This is where I found reading the charter with your charter revision this year.
Charter revision?
When you were doing the charter revision, I reread the charter.
Oh, you
Yeah.
memorized it? That's awesome.
That's it.
What section is that?
C94, A6. Actions requiring, following actions require a town meeting.
Applications for federal or state grants involving the commitment to expend town funds.
I don't think any of us are against it. I'm not saying that, but it's a
Well, you
matter
gotta
of, do we
follow
have the
it.
authority to do this? And we only have 9 days to work with. And we just got really notified of this tonight, or 2 days ago.
C94 what?
C94,
Six.
A6. Page 21. This is standard.
So, seems pretty clear that we would need a town meeting for this.
I don't know. It could be how it's read. I won't say it's very difficult to interpret. And what's the days you need to schedule a town meeting? You can schedule it.
Well, it needs to be voted on, posted enough advance, and scheduled, so we need time. I think it's a 7-day requirement, advance posting to the paper, which costs $700.
One of the meetings,
Trying to get a hold of the town attorney.
someone said that wasn't required anymore. Someone said that wasn't required anymore, posting to the,
That's what Jules was saying.
oh, maybe that's his attorney.
But these are the questions that would have been nice to have before the meeting.
We got it on Friday. It's the summer. Are you really gonna do that? We got it on Friday.
Do what?
We're volunteers. Are you really we got it just on Friday, this information. We got told we were getting a presentation on Friday.
Excuse me.
It's
I
now
can't hear you.
Wednesday. We got told about this information on Friday of last week,
I actually requested it to be added to the agenda and heard nothing back, so.
on Friday. Brianna said she responded back to you. She's actually on holiday. The rest
There
of
was
us,
no
I was out of
response.
town. And it's 3 days later. If you got it in July, if you really wanted to go down that road, if we got it in July, why didn't we have it in July to start the process of looking at
The
this?
application was posted on July 12th.
Okay.
And we had to scramble to get something in
Now
there,
August-
which
it's
was
August.
Williams Park.
8th, 9th right now, so you can't throw at us that we didn't prepare and didn't have these questions.
I'm not throwing anything at you, Glenn. I'm asking, like, you couldn't have asked it earlier today, because it's now 7:30 at night, and I'm trying to get a hold of council to answer your question that nobody brought to my
I actually
attention.
had to work today. I put a lot of time in.
I'm glad that you looked at the chart. Somebody probably should have looked at the charter before it got here. Not our job to look at the
Or
charter.
have memorized it since they reviewed it during charter revision. Okay, well, here we are. I guess we're not gonna be able to do it tonight, so. Is that your question? Are we gonna
It's
be
not
able
my
to do this
question.
tonight?
I asked you if we're able to do it. I asked you are we able, under our charter, to approve this? None of us at this table are against it, I don't believe. There's not one person that's a no. On this
I'm not
game.
there yet. I haven't
Okay.
talked about the finance.
All right.
Yeah.
I think that it's not the opposition, is do we have the legal right to do
Just
this?
to Dan's point, there is no request for funding in this moment. It is to submit the application. There's 30 days after approval of the grant, right, Greg, according to the stipulations, that we have to discuss the money.
But
And a
The
town match is
application
not
isn't
required.
binding for the funding.
I understand that. I understand.
So a town match is not required, so
No.
then why are we talking $100,000?
It's just recommended. So if it were to be approved, I'm sure our points would be greater if we, right, Greg?
Plus, it doesn't cover design. We have to design the thing. It's gotta, we have to have, go out to bid, we have to have design plans. So it's gotta be designed, and the grant doesn't cover engineering design.
So what's the cost of design and engineering? And do we know that this $500,000 is gonna cover the cost? Because I thought the tennis court refurbishment was like $250,000.
So
That was
it's
with
not-
the addition of additional courts next to the tennis courts. If we only did the clay courts, Southbury just put in 4 pickleball courts for 130.
with the fencing and what have you, with no lights.
So, do we know what the whole project is gonna cost?
That's why we're going out with design engineering, which we need to decide is gonna cost $2,500 to do that.
Talk about today's meeting. With our design, can I?
Yeah.
Why don't you, would you guys mind getting the information from
Yeah,
Greg?
fine,
since
right
you've
now.
been working
Comes
on
to
this?
do.
So we've had a series of meetings with the design engineering company. By the way, this grant requires, on page 2 of the application, it says, cost estimates and design must be prepared by a professional engineer. So we just can't make up a bunch of numbers in the application. It's got to be certified by a PE. That's required in the grant. So we've engaged Freeman companies who have given us a lot of their time over the past 3 weeks. We've had 2 or 3 Zoom meetings with them, one today. And they have said that by Friday, we will have a preliminary design and a cost estimate. We told them the maximum is $500,000. Based on other courts installed in Connecticut within the past 2 years, they are very comfortable that we'll get the pickleball courts, ADA compliance, but probably not the bathroom upgrades. So the scope of work and the cost estimate we're going to get from them by Friday is going to be within $500,000 maximum, plus 10%, including 10% contingency. So that's their commitment to us. And that call was at 11 o'clock this morning. And just for clarity too, the grant application clearly says in the guidelines that town funding must be secured within 30 days of receiving the award. The awards, they said the awards will be announced on September 29th. So we'll have 30 days from that award, assuming we get awarded, to have our town funds committed to. So we have a whole month of October.
Roll back another step on me here then, please. In here it says recommended up to, but not to exceed 20%. We got told there is no town match required, but yet now you're saying town match we have to have within 30 days.
I understand that. It's,
Yeah, it makes it more competitive.
Best
I mean,
foot
that's
forward.
always been the case.
They
in the past
prefer
with
the
steep
match.
grants,
I
so-
understand that.
They
So in
look
other words, if the
favorably.
town's not putting up, they're not interested in
Pretty
the
much.
grant, so they would be,
Well, they wouldn't say they're not interested. There's 116 towns applying for $30 million. If every town goes for $500,000, that's $56 million. So they're gonna have to make, but not every town applies. Not every town applies for $500,000 based on historical steep grant applicants that we looked at. But it's a very competitive process. And again, the grant does not cover engineering design. So the $500,000 is construction only. We know we're gonna have to pay for engineering design. We ought to have a little contingency in there for little amenities we'd like to add, and it's gonna take some project management.
I see
None of-
where you're going with that though, because if we don't put up the match, we don't need the town meeting.
Well, we need one town, so, can I tell?
Yes.
agree.
Can I tell?
yeah.
We can try.
So this section in purple talks about the special appropriation. We would need a special appropriation for $500,000 even without a town match because we're spending it. And heaven forbid, we put it at Williams Park without going to a town meeting, that would benefit.
But not at the initial application.
But, so that part talks about the needing it to spend the money, but this is a separate part that Glenn has brought up, and the attorney was at the meeting on Monday night when it was approved by the selectmen, so I don't know why he didn't bring it up then. This appears to be separate for just the application. So I see your point, it's separate from the funding.
Correct.
So it looks like
It says,
both-
do we have the authority to even have the vote on this? That's all. That's the question on the table.
I mean, I guess my other question is if
So
the
did you know
grant is
this on
applied-
Monday night?
I didn't know this until just a minute ago.
I mean, if you apply for the grant and they award it, but in the meantime have a town meeting and it doesn't get approved and we can't go forward with it, I mean, is that going to look unfavorably on us if we turn down a grant that we applied for, because the town didn't approve it at a town meeting?
We don't have
So
to.
what's the question?
If-
Does
We
that
can
poison us
deny-
for,
we can-
Yeah,
for
going
future
forward,
grants, for
are
future
we
grants?
ruining our chances?
I
going
mean, we don't
forward?
even know if the steep grant will be available next year, so
I don't think it.
we
This
can
is- this
deny,
is
we don't
just a-
have to accept the grant even if it's approved at any point.
This is just a charter thing. This isn't
Yeah.
a state thing. This is a charter thing. I mean, do we have the authority as a Board of Finance with approve this without having a town meeting?
It sounds like
And
that's
it's
a
a-
no. So, I guess this is, we can apply without a match.
No, we would still, none of this says it. We still have to have the appropriation. Let's say we have no match. The appropriation, up here, it talks about, it doesn't, money from grants. I think this is the section, there's so many sections, that, this section, and I'm not the attorney, so I can't give a legal opinion, special appropriations, other than those from cash surplus borrowing, may be acted on only by a special town meeting. And the 500,000 would be a special appropriation. So you think about when we go out for any of these things, we bring them to a town meeting for the whole amount, that not just the local share. So even if the local share is zero, it is a 500,000 special appropriation.
But we're
And that's how
not
we
gonna
treat
know
it.
if we need to appropriate that unless it's granted.
So we would, I would think, and again, I'm the accountant, not the attorney, that we would say, we would like permission to spend this if we receive the grant. And that's what we've done in the past, is contingent on receiving the grant. For example, the $500,000 or the $5 million for the Still River Greenway was if we received the grant, that we're not spending $5 million on the Still River Greenway without the grant. And I think all of them that come through are contingent on receiving the grant.
But what I'm saying is that could come after the application.
According to this paragraph, it could, but the one that Glenn just pointed out seems like it can't. Again, I'm just a layperson reading it.
So this
It's a
would be-
legal document.
These, where it says commitment to expend town funds, meaning the money the grant's putting into it.
Right. Well,
Or is it the 20% match that we're talking about here?
So that seems to be the 20% match, yeah.
Let's move on for that for 1 second. Dan, your thoughts on this?
So, that point notwithstanding, I'm not for or against any specific project. I'm for process and understanding where this fits overall. So the source of the funding for the town match that's being proposed, which I agree, if we're going to apply for a grant, we should do everything we can to get that grant, clearly. $64,000 of Still River Greenway money, what are the alternatives for that? If we're using it for this, that means we're not using it for something else. Where would this fall? And unfortunately, we don't have our our capital people here today. But where does the pickleball court fall in terms of priority on everything that we're doing that the matching money could be used? We're 6 weeks into a budget season where we've approved a capital budget, now we're taking funds from here and there in the next place that could be used for lots of other things, potentially, I don't know. So I just want to understand the financing alternatives of the money that we're gonna appropriate. So I don't have an answer.
Financing
What,
alternatives.
if we're using the money for that, it means we're not using it for something else, right? We went through weeks and weeks of capital debate, and we're gonna cut this and not that. Did we cut something that we could have used this money for that is of a higher priority than this? I don't know, than this court, or is there something on the list that's of a higher priority that we should be using this money for instead? We're focusing on this one thing, which is great, and it's a good thing, but it's a shiny object. And there's a whole continuum of things that we need to do in town, and every dollar needs to be examined across the entire spectrum, not just for the specific project. That's my thought.
Well, the
Can I ask a
capital,
question as a?
No.
just
the
a-
capital committee hasn't reconvened, so we don't know any of that. What we know is this opportunity exists before us now.
Yep.
Clearly, it says it's for recreational
Yep,
use.
I agree with that.
When the former director of the Parks and Rec was here, and I first came into my tenure, she brought some of the issues at Williams Park to my attention. And initially, my eye went to Williams Park when Greg brought the grant to me, because there's already existing tennis court there that costs us $8,000 a year to pay for, and we have 10 families signed up to use it. So we're spending $7,000 on clay courts at Williams Park that very few people use. So to do all the other things that Laura mentioned about upgrading Williams, it seemed to make sense. And then conservation got involved, and I can see their side of it as well. So we looked to use, it seems hasty, but it is hasty, because the grant was just announced on
Yep.
July 12th. It's due on the 18th of August. Maybe we don't do it this year, because clearly we have an issue. And, to sit here and point fingers and say who missed it, who didn't memorize chapter C946 of the charter, that's not for a healthy debate. I think we need to just decide, is this something that we can get after before the 18th of August? And if we need a town meeting, the answer is probably no.
Mary, your thoughts?
Yeah, I wish the process was laid out a little more clearly. There seems to be some conflicting paragraphs in the charter that are making that pretty tough.
This isn't the only area.
Your general thoughts on the project itself?
I mean, they're nice upgrades to facilities that I'm sure people in town would want to use. But like Dan said, we just did our whole capital plan very recently, but then the grant comes up, and
Right.
yeah, so you can't always account for everything ahead of time. Like, oh wow, there's this great grant opportunity, let's go for it.
In fairness, before you, pickleball was on the list
Yeah.
as one of the items to go over,
Yep.
just so it's not out of the blue.
I
This
agree.
isn't like
It's on
blue
long-term plan. That
sky,
was a good point.
it dropped out of the sky.
Yep.
So, go ahead, I'm sorry, go ahead, continue, Mary.
Yeah, so there's obviously lots of good things to this. It's also unfortunate the timeline is so squeezed. So you want to,
Agreed.
make a good decision.
Eileen?
Yeah, I feel like that $65,000 for the Still River Greenway, where the ability to do the accessibility and fit that in really fits with the plan, and so it's in keeping with what that money was originally allotted for. I think the other thing that comes back to mind on me is when we first were in office and the macroburst hit and we had the lights in the soccer fields at the high school. And it was in a long-range plan for something that we wanted to do. The macroburst took them down. We were getting insurance money to put new ones back up, and we invested at a time when purse strings were getting tightened and everything was getting reviewed because we had very unexpected large expenses. We made the investment in the lights because we knew that in the long term was something that we wanted to do, and it turned out to be a great investment. I mean,
From the
nobody wanted.
academy?
That wasn't intentional, but it brought to mind that type of situation. So I totally understand the short timelines. It's really just the wording of the charter that I'm hung up on, and
Okay.
we get called out on process anytime somebody can find it, and they don't want to be under that microscope again when we're trying to do what's best for the town. I mean, just trying to think if there
I
are
got it. So
possibilities.
let's move forward. All
Okay.
right, I'm gonna make a motion that we approve the application for the grant based on the town meeting or meeting the charter's requirements, and that the town meeting can happen prior to the application. So
And it
we'll
happened-
approve it.
Approve what?
based on the application going
Just the
forward.
application, we're not approving any
Right,
money.
right. Then the match, the proposed match, based on the thing, but solely based on the contingency that a town meeting occurs, or we get attorney, feedback from the attorney saying we have the mandate to be able to do this.
So
In 90.
the selectmen have not yet approved the cash, the match.
So we can't approve anything then?
We could do
No.
we'd have to do a joint special meeting of the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance within the next few days.
I'm traveling. I gotta go to work. I gotta be in Montreal. I gotta be
Do
in
you have a
Salt Lake.
quorum if we did that without your presence?
Brianna's on vacation and Ryan's on vacation.
And I have an executive assistant who is not around much. That doesn't mean we can't make it happen.
If Ryan gets back, we can do it.
I will call in.
We would also need the
You can call me,
$2,500 approval for the engineering design, which is coming from where?
Right now, we're thinking it's added to the 11.5.
And that 11, oh, that's part of the Parks and Rec budget?
From last year, that we would transfer, make an approval to transfer to capital non-recurring.
So we would have
Where
to
is it
make
now?
an agenda.
It's a surplus in their year-end 23.
Actually, can we approve that separately?
So it's part of the overall.
Because that work has to be done
That's-
immediately.
And that overall surplus is used for what? Where do we put the entire surplus? Is that in the general fund?
It would be in the general
It's
fund.
not there yet.
I meant
It's,
to-
well, I haven't closed.
It has to go to one or the other.
Yeah. I don't think you approved the 2,500 the other night. Did you approve that transfer?
I have to see what the motion said in the minutes. It is listed in there under a certain project number. So yes. I just reviewed the minutes this afternoon.
Yeah, if they did the 2,500 Monday, we could do the 2,500 tonight.
I wasn't copied on the
As
request,
minutes
so I don't
posted
know.
yet.
You provided the,
I provided the
Project
location,
number.
but usually there's a letter that goes from the selectmen to the Board of Finance, and I don't always get copied, and I didn't see a letter, but there.
We got nothing from anybody for this meeting.
We got
We didn't even get the finance reports. I didn't get them.
we didn't give them.
We got nothing
Usually, right?
for this meeting,
I'm
so
sorry.
we are mushrooms
Yeah, yeah.
in the dark.
Oh.
I didn't have that.
I'm so sorry. I sent this one to my minutes.
well,
Just
and
Monday.
our town clerk's been on vacation, so I don't know if they were even posted, to be honest with you, but they were completed this afternoon.
They're not posted.
What's the motion?
There is none.
You pulled it up?
Yeah, the last minute report
Okay.
were 7 to 1.
Oh, there are minutes from discussing.
Unfortunately, I'm
We
getting
can't
the
approve-
sense that this
It
is
passed.
not gonna start, not gonna fly for
The
this year.
2,500 passed on Monday, 3,930. It's in the minutes.
Which project number was it?
SG24C, in the amount of 2,500.
All right, so the 64, that we took it out of the 6,400, 64,000, that's correct, because I haven't closed the books yet to verify that there is 11.5 or 2,500 more than 11.5. So
So we approve this tonight. Board of Selectmen has to approve the match money, appropriate the match money, for us to even have a crack at this. And then town meeting has to occur, or we have to get a legal response from the town attorney before the application is submitted. Correct or not correct?
We would, what if we approved it at a town meeting that approved, because there would be town money, if we had, and I don't know if this is legal, we'd have to check with the town attorney, we approved the 500,000 additional appropriation, the 100,000 is a transfer. So would we need to bring that to a town meeting? We could do it with just the two boards.
No, it has, that's what the whole discussion has been, before the initial application, you gotta have the money appropriated.
If it involves town money. I mean,
Yeah, by then you're saying it's
commitment.
appropriated.
So we would, if we're gonna spend 100,000,
Better than nothing.
we would need a town, according to what you're pointing out, we would need a town meeting to spend 600,000. We would need 500,000 to be at a town meeting for the additional appropriation. The 100,000 isn't an additional appropriation, it's a transfer. So, and we do transfers without town meetings. Does that make sense?
Set up a special meeting, give us the dates, we'll accommodate.
But that's still cart before the horse, because the application doesn't call for any funding.
But if we're gonna try and make ours better, we wanna put 100,000 is what I heard. So, and again, this is that, I'm not an attorney, that my layperson's reading. Initial application that involves the commitment to spend town funds, and we wanna commit 100,000, so we fall under this thing, needs a town meeting.
I agree. It's
Second.
not the actual commitment, it's an application that would involve the commitment, and that's exactly what this is.
Correct. Second, we go up to here, that's highlighted in purple. That says special appropriations require a town meeting that, but this isn't so 500,000 is a special appropriation, it's new money, new spending. But 100,000 is a transfer and not new spending. So I think, and we can check with the attorney, I think we have the town meeting that would handle the first commitment and approve the 500,000 of spending subject to receiving the grant. And then at a later time, we transfer the money, Board of Selectmen first, Board of Finance separate. Second.
I think we need feedback from the town attorney.
And we
Set
still
up a
need a
meeting.
special, we still need a joint meeting of the Board of Selectmen and Finance.
You need to approve it before we can even,
Or if we did a joint meeting where they approve and then we subsequently,
Yeah.
it would be the same, it's right there.
We need 48 hours for that, so we won't be able to do it till Monday. And I have no secretary, so I need to find someone who knows how to set up a special meeting.
Lisa, that's right.
and we need to get some.
But Ginny does.
Fine.
Oh, Ginny.
Well, no, I should be in Montreal by then.
I'm away, but I'll dial in.
All right. Thank you. Anything else you want to add?
Sorry for taking so much of your time.
No,
but
no,
thank
you're-
you.
you're-
We wanna get it right.
No, yeah, absolutely, no, thank you. I appreciate you
Greg?
taking the time to listen.
Anything from you?
Nope.
Thank you. All right. Let's go on to the report of the first selectman.
That is all I have.
Okay. Works for me. All right, let's go on to, Bob, are you here for the Board of Ed?
No, just here to listen.
All right, then let's go on to Marcia, Revenue and Capital, please.
All right. Thought they were all here for the finance report, but I guess not. Oh, good, thank you. 22-23, that that we can't figure out, we can't determine where we stand on our budget for revenue yet, because we have to include July and August tax collections. A modified accrual basis says we add the next 60 days of tax payments, and we would then subtract the first 60 days of tax payments. So essentially, it's on a cash basis from from September 1st to August 31st. So we have to wait, and the reason why I'm hesitant to even estimate more is because we have a tax sale going on August 23rd. Of the 30 properties, 9 have paid, and we are expecting more to pay, so we might have a really good collections month in August, which again would go against the 22-23 year. But in comparing where we stand otherwise to June 30th, you had a report at June 30th. The only projections were receivables. There's nothing exciting different than what we talked about then. And we're working on finalizing and closing the books for last year for revenues. As far as expenditures, again, working on closing the books. We give the departments 31 days to get their invoices in, close out their purchase orders from last year, so that things go into the proper year. 31 days was last Monday. We made the final payments on the June 23 bills on Friday. So we started closing the books today. We start with the small funds and finish with the general fund, only because things like today I was working on what are we charging ARPA for the police security, and it's easier to look at that from each line in these grants and projects than it is to look at the police wages and say, what do I have to change here? So that's why we start with the small funds and go to the big fund. But that's what we're working on. We're still waiting as far as the capital. We're still waiting for the attorney. I thought I had another report and I didn't. We're still waiting for the attorney to give us the rules on the transfer, that can we transfer between lines and ARPA? And the question is, because it was approved at a town meeting line by line, what do we have to do?
So, if I can interject, because the other night we kind of all agreed, but not in a vote, that it would probably be prudent to do a town meeting for any transfers of ARPA.
Okay.
I mean, that isn't a legal opinion, but
It
when
wouldn't
you
hurt.
talk about these rules, are you referring to something specific, or is it just for the attorney to say one way or the other?
Just for the attorney to say that, and if he's not going to say, then doing it most conservative would be best.
I mean, I was just wondering, because you keep talking about these rules, there really are no rules of ARPA,
Well,
because we've never had ARPA.
he's the one that interprets the chart that, and says what the processes are. So that's why we asked. And he hasn't responded that he's not going to answer. He just hasn't responded at all.
Well, he did respond, and he said, what specifically is the question?
And
We'd have to go back and look through all those emails, but
I thought I sent him this.
when was this sent?
Beginning of April.
I don't remember, I have to go back.
And I did remind him in May that we were still waiting, and I reminded him in June that we were still waiting, and he didn't say, oh, I'm waiting for you. But anyway,
I thought we had $134,000 balance of ARPA. You told me the Board of Finance was interested in saving to defray taxes in the next
so we
budget.
talked about, we have 213 that I thought they were intending to move, and which would be one of the transfers that we would have to do. As far as other capital accounts, the cash capital account is, I've got a few open questions, but it's essentially closed, and we'll ask for transfers next month. ARPA it's essentially closed, and we'll need some transfers. Candlewood Lake Elementary School, I got a call from somebody saying, I heard that's 11 million over budget. It is not over budget, it is safely under budget. That, just as we had expected, there's no surprises there as of about 2 o'clock this afternoon on the finances. That, I don't know where that rumor started. The Police Special Revenue Fund, that's essentially closed. I think we were waiting for one invoice. There's no known issues there. And the other place that we have capital is the Bonded Capital Fund. I'll be closing that one next. I haven't closed that one. Just because some of those AIA invoices take a little longer to come in. And the MBC will be doing their final approvals in August. 2024's budget, that revenues that I don't like to give out July until we balance cash because there's so much activity that, we're talking big numbers, and so the statements are in and we're working on balancing those. Expenditures that don't see the report because I forgot to send it to you, I'm sorry, but I will send it to you right after this. But the highlights are that we usually do transfers every quarter. That will be next month. That the things that I'm think that we may need more money for, salary study. The budget expired June 30th. I couldn't do a PO because we didn't know the vendor. So a PO, a purchase order, is a firm commitment, so we need money for that. That blight, that we've only incurred $1,000 of expenses up through July 31st, but the attorney is estimating that we're going to need $40,000 of expenses for 2 cases, a total of 40, and we only have $15,000 in the budget. So right now, we're thinking we're looking for $25,000. The building sporadic wages, we're 20% through the annual budget, but only 5% through the year. So we'll need more money there. The registrars, they need more money for the primary. They're calculating that. They need more money for a records update. I think he's going to come and talk to you about that. That there's something that has a deadline of June 30th of 2024, and he didn't know that was the deadline when he did his budget. And then the registrars, the early voting, he'll do a calculation. It won't come to you in September. It'll be a calculation later this year on when the final early voting rules are done. The fire marshal assistant, we should have extra money there. A delay in hiring the assistant will create some savings. The engineering for the steep grant of $2,500 that I had forgotten that we had already approved, so I have that on the list. And then it's the wild card of the CES building that originally we thought we would get it July 31st. Now it looks like it's turning over to us on August 31st. And we don't know the money, we don't know the uses. So that's just something that we're going to probably have on our list all year. As far as
We'll go back to that page. Whoa.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Blight legal, we're going to be 25,000 over going into month 1. Basically, we've committed, or we're getting told by our attorneys, 20,000 and 20,000. That's above the retainer, I would assume.
Yes.
So we only have 15,000 on the line item, and have we expended this money or entered into contract with the attorney on this? Because we only have approval of 15,000.
No, the 15,000 was to address, shoring places up if they get broken into, or if, a tree falls through a roof.
I'm talking legal fees only. Like the legal fees, if we have 15,000 in the account right now, the line item. The budget is 15,000, I believe, for that line item.
Yes.
And we are now saying we're expending 40,000 against that line item. It would need to be an interdepartment transfer that should be done prior to the expenditure, not after the expenditure. So we need to shore that up a little bit. Because again, this is an expense over budget, which nobody has the authority to spend. And we need to shore that up if we're gonna miss by 25,000 in month 2, if we think this is already gonna be. So that needs to be shored up to the point of, it needs to be approved by the Board of Selectmen, I believe, and then come to us before we even incur this expense. And we've only incurred 1,000 of it, but if we have the 40,000 sitting out there as a liability, we need to put that through.
So this is for next month.
Yeah, before you
Before it
incur the
gets spent.
expense, right? You're,
Right.
Or it's committed.
you've been told,
So it will come through us next month.
right,
So
right,
you-
because you've been told, I'm not saying right, wrong, and different. This is not a right, wrong, or different. You've been told you're gonna incur $40,000.
Yeah, we have 2 major cases.
Okay, fine, you have to run the town, understand that. But what we're saying is, we won't have, you don't have the line item authority to spend over that 15 unless it goes through the selectmen and then comes to us. I'm not saying we're turning it down, we're just saying we gotta,
Yeah, that's why we're gonna address it next month.
So,
Fair
so I
answer.
think what you're saying is make sure we don't spend more than 14,000 in August.
correct. And
Good
then,
thing we're halfway through August.
I don't understand the file marshal assistant. Why are we delaying a hiring if it's a needed position?
So it is a needed position, but it's another one of those shortage of skills across the state. And in order to be a fire marshal, you have to go through the certification process. And there's statute that says preference is to be given to fire marshals, certified fire marshals who are current volunteers of a town department.
So it's not a
we're-
delay, it's just we can't find
We
anybody.
have a person identified and hired contingent on the completion of the certification process, which is December of this year.
Gotcha.
So I spoke to Mike Connors on my way out of the building tonight. We've spoken about it ad nauseum. He is our new fire marshal. And he's been getting caught up and feels very comfortable. He was totally part of this whole process and decision-making, and he's confident that we're gonna be fine and moving forward.
Yeah, so it's not really a delay, it's just you
It's a
can't
delay
fill
in
the
the hiring,
position,
delay in
it's
the
not
We
a,
still have our part-timers, so should something catastrophic happen, God forbid, we've got people waiting in line to help out.
thank you.
So what's the net savings from that full year budgeted salary versus a half year actual salary? And we have to make sure we don't spend that 5 times.
Well, I would like for some of that to go over to the building department so we can continue to give them some part-time help.
Okay?
I haven't calculated when, by the time I do a transfer, I'll have
Yeah.
calculated, but I don't know when the new person is starting,
enough.
and I don't know the new wages, but I'll have all that
Okay.
before I ask you for a transfer.
All right, thank you.
All right, also in 2024, last night, the Board of, did you approve this, or you
Yes.
just talked about it?
It's approved.
Okay, the Board of Selectmen approved a transfer that,
The transfer?
the transfer, that,
No,
from
we didn't approve
union
any.
wages to non-union wages. I think you talked about it, but I don't think you approved
We didn't
it.
approve any transfers last night.
Okay. So
I
this
thought you
will,
meant the contract, I'm sorry.
this would be a intra-department transfer, so you don't have to approve it. But it's just a big change in the police allocations. And I just tried to tell you anything I know about when I come in. That an officer moving from rank and file officer, they're increasing the number of administrative officers and decreasing the number of rank and file officers, I think is what they're called. And that'll be covered with the wages that the same officer would have gotten as a union employee, and also that the new hires are coming in at lower steps than anticipated, kind of like the teacher turnover savings. We have some of that here as well. that one of the things I'd like to ask you for next month, and if you have a problem, I'd like to know about it, because the police are starting a new scheduling and time and attendance program, and part of that is programming all of the salaries and things. The police, most every department is in line with the Uniform Chart of Accounts, except for the police. And this would be a great time to, before we program that, to put them in alignment with the Uniform Chart of Accounts. And so a lot of them are 1-for-1, but all those union positions, the Uniform Chart of Accounts has one line for that. Or the Uniform Chart of Accounts as Brookfield had adapted it a few years ago. We feel as though we could still get the data for dispatchers or clerical. It wouldn't show up on the actual summary budget to actual report, but if someone was interested, that we can do a history report and pull this data in a pivot table from dispatchers or clerical or holiday pay. We could also pull the data, as I understand it, from the police, from their scheduling program. So I don't think we would lose any data. If we were starting to combine some of these, for example, they've got about 35 lines of expenditures as well, that probably if we're gonna combine those, it might go down to 10 lines. We're not looking to do that, maybe next budget. What we could also do is add numbers in the chart of accounts to be able to pull those out if we wanted to in a separate report. But for now, we're looking at the option of combining these just to make it finally match the Uniform Chart of Accounts.
I think the only thing I see there is when we do budgets, we usually, there's usually a side note that just explains it, the number, when things have been moved because the accounts are set up differently. That's the only thing.
I would anticipate that on the budget worksheet for their
Yep.
payroll, since I do that and I need all that detail to try and figure it out, because there's awful lot off to the right that's not even in the print range, that we would still do the budget worksheets the way we've been doing it, just because that would say, oh wait, there's something really off here, and it would give us that data. So I would think that we would still do that, and we're still thinking about, again, that longer, maybe adding a program number. And we've talked about that for a few years with some of the departments, that if we had, 51619, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, so that when they do their budgets, if you notice that they've got the scuba team, and they've got the patrol, I'm not really sure of all the names, but we've talked to them, and would it be helpful to say A is scuba team, and so if you wanted to just pull the data from the scuba team, right now they're doing a lot manually, and we'd like to get rid of that. So do we set up some sort of a simple program numbers? And again, the same thing for the library. They've got their programs, which is a big number, and that is shared with the teen program and the adult program and the children's program. Do we also give them the A, B, C, D, just to help them? We're still using the standard chart of accounts, but we provide more data to them. So that's kind of what we're thinking.
And I would agree, maybe matrons and special officers is outdated.
Could be. Apparently we do have matrons for when there's female people in jail. So if you think about that during the next month and have any questions or concerns about that, please let me know, because at the same time, we're starting to meet weekly with the police about getting their system up and running and again, it would be easiest to streamline it now, before they do that. As far as the budget update, there's the potential steep money that we talked about. The audit update, the auditors are coming the week of September 11th and 18th. That is just the perfect sweet spot for us. And we should be in good shape. Just based on looking at how many hours I've put into closing so far this year compared to the hours I put in, because I keep the detailed timesheets, that I've put in more hours already in closing. That last year I didn't start till the middle of the month. As far as other things that have held the audit back in the past, that getting the numbers from the actuaries have been a problem, and we got those last month. That might have been a little bit of a bear getting the departments to get their data to the actuaries, but we've already got all the actuary numbers. WPCA, we have a commitment from, usually we don't get that until the end of September or October. We've got a commitment that we'll have it by August 31st from their outside accountants. And capital assets, we have a draft capital asset policy that we're just trying to flesh through before we bring it to the boards. We have a inventory of capital assets divided by department. That we're working on the instructions. We'll be giving that to them probably on Monday to ask them to do a physical inventory. This is the first time we've had an internal physical inventory. 2 years ago we had an external one just so we could get the listing of assets. And we've got two types of assets. One, capital assets that are on the financial statements, and we also have inventory assets, and they'll both follow the same. I should have just called them assets, but they'll both follow the same, so that we have an inventory of anything over from $500 to the capital asset threshold, and then from the capital asset threshold and above.
And who's performing that work?
The finance and purchasing are doing the work to give it to the departments. We're asking them to sign off and make any corrections. If you don't have this, what happened to it? That if you have more that just never got picked up in an inventory, let us know. I'm thinking with the inventory assets, there'll be a lot of changes.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking there'll be a lot with the capital assets. That this year we did try to bring it up even better. We went through all the records that PERMA had and compared ours to theirs. It took probably about a week. But we think we have a pretty good list, and we just keep trying to get it better. Any questions on any of that?
No, let's go back 3 slides. Do some housekeeping. Keep going. Whoa, back one. So we can make a motion right now for the engineering for the steep grant, right? I mean,
Yes, it would be.
we talked about that.
It would be $2,500 coming out of the CNR fund for Still River Greenway design and going into the steep grant engineering.
And this was approved by the Board of Selectmen Monday night.
Yes, and I think Eileen has the exact words.
So, yeah, can we make that motion?
So the motion was made that the Board of Selectmen approve the first selectman to sign with the town clerk the resolution and move forward with the option 2, which is to apply for the steep grant at Town Hall campus pending Parks and Rec Commission approval and the Board of Finance approval for the funding of the conceptual design in the amount of
So
$2,500.
we can make it a motion that the Board of Finance approve the funding of the conceptual design project
SG24C.
in the amount of 2,500. Do I have a second?
Second.
Discussion?
For the reasons I stated before, I'm not gonna agree with it, but that's
Okay,
fine.
so, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
Thank you. Okay.
Parks and Rec, Parks and
Marcia.
Rec Commission is meeting tomorrow night in a special meeting. Just FYI, because they haven't, but now I don't know if they would need that. I guess they could jump into our special meeting.
Okay. Marcia, you all set now? Any other questions for Marcia?
I'm
Any
good.
other questions? Dan, Audit Committee?
Nothing new.
Brianna's not here. No old business. Under new business, the bylaws discussion, I'd like to table that since not everybody's here. Make a motion to table that. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Yeah, I'd just like to make it a priority for next month.
Yeah, I
Anything
have-
I can do to help.
I actually finished all the revisions. I have one or two things to
Okay.
ask Marcia. I'll send it out tonight when I get
Okay,
home.
I'd love to, I think we gotta make it a.
No, I agree, but I
Yeah.
want everybody here.
Yeah, I agree, yeah.
So, all those in favor of tabling?
Aye.
All right. Salary study. All right, my turn to do some driving. Oh, you can just plug it in?
You can just plug it in.
Doesn't matter which side?
As long as the holes fit. It does take a minute. But you have to plug the other one in too. Both.
Tell me.
That'll take 2 minutes.
It won't fit.
Give it easy, you want?
You put the other one around the other side, the little one on the other side. Oh, that's the big one.
Yeah,
I brought
Yeah, right here.
two left.
I got it that way, but I need, now I need the USB for the one on this side. Right. Bet it works better now.
It still takes a minute.
Yeah, it's doing something. All right. I'll start. I think we all agree we needed a salary study. All of the Board of Finances agree. But when we interviewed the group that was the RFQ low bidder, and maybe we didn't word the RFQ properly, we'll take blame for that, or I will, is they mentioned they were only gonna do like-to-like positions. They were not gonna do overall department versus function analysis. And 3, that the town would have to send out the letters to get the data. So we would have to do the work for the data collection. So in a quick review, if you don't do it as a department whole, it's really not giving us the answers that we're looking for. Because if you break it down by department, say, and I chose departmental salaries here, there's not one person's name in this, not one person's thing. Brookfield, for the tax collector in salaries, we spend $196,412. New Fairfield spends $197,273. Newtown spends $247,028.
Some of these positions are union though.
It's overall what I'm saying is overall salaries for function. The function of the tax collector in each town is pretty similar. That's what I'm trying to get to. Tax collector in Newtown does the same function as a tax collector in Brookfield, does the same function as a tax collector in New Milford. When you start looking at individual match for match, that's not what we're gonna get, and I'll show that to you in a little bit. So If you look, Bethel runs their whole department on $212,000 for their tax collecting. That's their whole department, including supplies and all expenses in, where Brookfield is $268,000. So if you take the averages, we're above average in salaries for the overall function of the tax collector by just a little bit, and we're above average on the whole cost to run the department. So if you look at the top line, the populations of Brookfield are 17.5, New Fairfield 13.5, Bethel 20,000 or 21,000, Newtown 28,000, New Milford 28,000. So by definition too, New Milford and Newtown are doing much more work than we are doing in account-wise. Not saying we're doing, I'm just saying this is where if you broke it down individually, it's not necessarily like for like. The tax assessor, $265,924 in overall salaries
I
for
see
that
those
department.
numbers then, but what is it you're trying to demonstrate by talking about it by department?
Okay, so now,
Because we're talking
if you
about
go like for
non-union
like, if you go
salaries.
like for like, look at the town clerk in Newtown.
I can't see
Their
that.
assistant makes $87,000 and the director makes $87,000. So if we start going like for like, you're not gonna get it. You're not gonna get what we're looking for. If you look at overall function per town, per department, again, tax assessor, $265,000 we spend in salaries to run our assessor's department. New Fairfield, $164, Newtown, $258, New Milford, $211. That's built up of numerous staff members in a department. If you go like for like, and the director in Newtown makes $200,000, and she only has one assistant that makes $20,000, and we go director to director, our director would be looking at $200,000. So we'd be at $400,000 in salaries.
That's not true.
This is true. These are numbers right off the budgets. These are true. You can't
What do
go
you mean by
like for like.
like for like? What are you talking, what do you, by lumping the departments
When
together?
we
what does
asked
that
the
have to do with
woman
salaries?
on the salary study, when we asked her, she said she's now looking at overall departments. She is looking at director to director, assistant to assistant.
Right.
So again, I'll go to this slide right here. Newtown pays their town clerk and their assistant town clerk the exact same money. It's right here. Town clerk, $87,351, and they actually pay their assistant town clerk more, $87,875. This is direct from their budget that was approved. So our assistant, if we use Newtown in part of this study, would be making more than the town clerk. That's why you have to look at a department as a whole. The department as a whole performs a function in the town. The town clerk performs a function in the town. So we'll go to the town clerk in this here, and our town clerk salaries are $203,769. New Fairfield is $164,244. Newtown is $201,792. New Milford is $195,073. The average is $191,220. We're above the average of the salaries to complete the task in all the area towns that touch us.
That
So-
includes union positions, which are
Salary-
part of this study.
But
All right, well, I'm gonna-
he's looking at department to department, and before when we looked at, if you looked at the town clerk in one town versus the town clerk in another, maybe they have more people supporting them in one, or they have different responsibilities, but the town clerk's office functions as a whole is pretty synonymous across towns. Like town clerks have a set of responsibilities and actions that they take regardless of how many people are doing it, and that's what he's trying to show here, is that as a department whole, the salaries, when you compare the salaries of the entire department,
You can't add that top, we're the highest paid in the area, you can't add on top of that and keep adding on top of
You
it.
can't.
We become more high
You
paid.
can't do a cumulative like that, because you're including salaries that aren't part of what would be for our salary study. We
But
can't
we're
touch.
looking,
What are you
as
gonna
part
gain
of
at-
the town budget.
And you don't know how they're paid.
I do know how they're
He's
paid.
talking efficiencies, you're talking potentially efficiencies.
Here. Let's look, this is the town, I give you everybody's salary in Newtown, tax collector's salary, I
I
give you
don't
everybody.
care about Newtown, because I don't understand what you're trying to demonstrate here. We're not, this salary study is to determine the analysis, which has never been done for this town, of
We're
are
doing
we
it the wrong
compensating
analysis.
people the right way?
The analysis is wrong. What we're doing is not collecting the proper data to get us what we want. Because if you have one person in Newtown doing the job, which I'll show you here, which is a good example, and
What analysis are you referring referring to if there's never been any
Go
analysis
to the
done?
human resource line. Newtown does their human resources for 91,000. We do it for 160,000. So what are you gonna match?
Does Newtown, you don't know what Newtown's duties are.
That's why like to
Does-
like isn't gonna work. Director to director isn't gonna work. We need more information, because we don't have it. Because if you were to go like for like, not only would we be more above the average, we'd be the highest paid in the whole area. If you go like for like, they have less people doing more tasks. Newtown is
Does the
28,000 people.
Newtown HR director take care of the Board of Ed?
We don't know, but this study ain't giving us that. This
Right.
study is giving us like-to-like salaries.
Based
So
on
we're gonna
title.
spend $20,000 to get numbers that I got in an hour.
Just like we spent 30 on a center school elementary study that.
You know what, I'm done.
We got nothing.
I make a motion that we make no recommendations for the salary
So we're gonna
study.
continue to operate in the dark and not know whether or not we're compensating our people appropriately.
But I think when the,
Motion's
when
on
we
the
had-
table. There's no argument. This is not gonna turn into an
We
argument.
can discuss.
yeah, we can discuss, when we had the presentation by, the organization that proposed the study, they basically told us they wouldn't be able to do apples to apples, and that would give, spending money on something that's not gonna give us what we need. Like, you need to, you need to equalize them to say that the tasks of this person is equal, in this town is done by 2 people in another town, and therefore, the salaries of those would be the equivalent of the sum of another. I mean,
Which they said they would
They
not do
wouldn't
when
do
I
it.
asked that question. It was gonna be like to like. Like to like is not gonna get us where we wanna go, because you have different people.
Where do we wanna go? What is the goal?
We wanna get it right. The end goal is you wanna pay your people
So we're gonna
right.
get it right by not doing any analysis at all?
I said
And
it's not
continuing
the
to
right
rely on
one.
CCM, which is horrible and unreliable.
I mean, it didn't sound like they were going to do anything different than what you presented to us already. That spreadsheet.
There was no, she told you specifically what we provided from what they did in Darien and wherever those 2
Yeah,
other
Buchanan.
towns were, was not the raw data. It was just a snapshot. She specifically said there was gonna be more to it than what you guys were provided. They're not gonna give us what that town paid for.
Agreed, it's still like to like. Like to like isn't gonna get us anywhere. It's not, the numbers
Are
aren't
you
gonna
guys,
get you.
can I ask, like, what, are you afraid of the results here? That
Oh,
you
no,
might
I'm not
have-
afraid of the results. I know
No?
the results. It'd be pay cuts across the board
You
if
know
you wanna
that?
go by that. I know the results. I do read these budgets. I go through every budget. In fact, you can look, here's New Fairfield's budget. I mean, here's Brookfield, here's Bethel's budget, here's New Fairfield's budget, I got New Milford's budget, so I read line items. And I'm telling you,
So you think we're, in certain cases, overpaying our people?
yes.
I'm sure in some cases we are, and in some cases we're under, and we're
And
not.
I don't
This
have the
study-
answers.
This study's not
So-
gonna give us
So
the
again,
answers.
you explained to me a tax assessor in the tax assessor in Brookfield's salaries for the whole department. We pay $265,000 to accomplish the tax assessor's goals in Brookfield. Okay, Brookfield is a relatively small town. Newtown pays $258 to accomplish the same goals. I'm sure tax assessors are pretty much aligned. I don't know, but they're paying $10,000 less dollars to get that function done in Newtown. New Milford's paying $211. Again,
And
these are
that's my point.
towns.
We've got union employees there who have a set salary. We don't know what their union people are being paid, and you can't.
This is
touch
total
those contracts.
overall salary to run the department, non-union and union. The equal parts equal the whole. The sum of the parts equal the whole. So we can't be paying our non-union people $150,000 a year because one town maybe pays that department $150 when we have 10 subordinates all making $60,000 under that. We become higher than what we are now. Everybody's agreed we need to get it right. But this study and the data that we've seen, which they've provided, and when we asked the questions, it was strictly a like to like. We agree a salary study needs to be done. This isn't the one. The RFQ might have been written wrong, and I took blame for that. I said that in my initial statement, that the RFQ may have been wrong. When we got the feedback from the low bidder, that she wasn't, or that group was not gonna give us the data required to make sense of this. It was just gonna give us numbers to numbers. And the numbers to numbers don't tell a story.
Well, one of your members just suggested she thought she was gonna be getting something that wasn't the final product, so was it clear on what the final product was to everybody?
When she talked about what she would provide, she made it pretty clear that it would never be apples to apples. She wasn't going to look at the
Nothing
job.
is, because every town is very different.
Correct.
But statistically and mathematically, you can pull out what the job functions are and the roles and responsibilities. And if it takes two people to do a job in one town and one person to do it in the other, then comparing the job title to the job title isn't going to be comparable, because you have two people doing the same job in one town and one person doing it in the other. And she wasn't going to.
It's not
I
just
can go back and
about
watch
the job and the job description itself, it's about hours worked and benefits and everything else that comes into
It's about the overall
consideration.
function of the department and how many touches they have compared to salary. The overall department salary is the driver
Let's
to
look
this.
at a building official then.
I don't have that, I only did this quick study. I can tell you,
How about a public works director?
again, I don't have that. I can get you that. I could spend, I don't get paid, but I could spend the time to do that. I mean, why don't you give it to us? Go to Newtown, go to Bethel, go to New Milford and Brookfield, and you do that for us, and you put that together for us. I took the time to look. The overall department
And
function,
it's a good thing you gave the former first selectman a raise, because, you know, and who set that salary?
Tara, we're done. I'm done.
I'm
Thank you.
fatigued, so, I mean, I applaud your passion. I'm quite honestly fatigued by the whole conversation for the last year. Something needs to be done. I was not impressed with the presentation last week.
How come you didn't interview the other bidders,
Me?
the board?
Because that wasn't within our budget at the time. That was the one, was within our budget at the time. They were a lot more money. They were a lot more money. So go
But
ahead,
you're
Dan.
saying we need the
Apologize.
salary study, and perhaps the other bidders would give us what we want, or you what you want. So you're just gonna throw the whole thing out without interviewing the other bidders? Who might be able to give you what you're looking for?
Dan?
I'm gonna call the vote.
All right, I make a motion that we recommend the salary study as is to go forward. All those in favor? All those
Maybe we
opposed?
need a second first.
Do I have a second?
Sure, I'll second that.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Aye, 4-0. So, thank you. All right, we're on to other items, don't have any, in public comment. Yes, sir, I knew,
Hi, yeah, hi, I appreciate your efforts here. I like to, the topic of transparency came up tonight, and I think that concerns us all. I'd urge the significantly more transparency from the Board of Finance. Public discourse is, of course, a right guaranteed by our Constitution. Letters and correspondence from the citizens of Brookfield to the Board of Finance are not available for public view in preparation for the public meeting. Neither are the proposed Board of Finance bylaws revisions. The Board of Finance shouldn't be censoring public comment and opinion by not providing this information. I think the Board of Finance needs to be more open in its business to the public. This analysis that you prepared is very good, and that should have been possibly included in the packet. All sensitive, non-sensitive meeting documents should be available to the public for review along with the meeting agenda. To its credit, the Board of Selectmen publishes all their correspondence with their meeting packet, and the Board of Finance, I think, has the same responsibility to the public. I think you should also consider moving the meeting to a larger room so that more members of the public may attend to see how well our tax dollars are being managed. Thank you.
thank you. I'll make a motion to adjourn, do I have a second?
I'd like to make a comment as a member of the public and as a taxpayer to this town, and seeing firsthand how employees of this town, you know, work. And the fact that I've turned over, as the first select woman, 11 leadership positions in a 22-month period, that I can tell you we're not compensating our people appropriately.
Okay, I'll counter that. I've spoken to your employees, and there wasn't any salary items that were the issue leaving this building.
Okay, all right,
So-
all
Yeah,
right,
this is-
all right, we're,
We don't have
motion to
comments.
adjourn.
And it's a shame.
Motion to
I
adjourn.
wasn't
I'll second.
I'll call the
finished.
vote.
All in favor?
I don't
Aye.
have
Adjourned.
3 minutes to make my public comment?
No.
No,
Thank you.
Great job.
they did that.